TSMC just had their earnings report of Q2 of this year, and we can see that they kind of blew out every single expectation out there. More importantly, they had a really nice guidance, not only for next quarter, but also, for well into next year and the year after. We can see on the comment here from the CEO, and I think this single comment is possibly gonna save the market in the semiconductor space, especially due to yesterday's total crash, where some of the stocks were down even over 10% due to the comments from Donald Trump. But we can see that he's clearly saying that, there's so much demand out there and they cannot, supply them for well into, 2025 or 2026. Additionally, I think one of the important questions are, TSMC is right now, ramping up the 2 nanometer dense node, and we can see that they're expected to have, I think, maybe like 15%. I would say 15% higher cost, but for that kind of node compared to the N3 and N5. So with 15% higher sales price, I think this also will come with improved margins. They're gonna start ramping up, and in the mass production will be in the second half of next year, with 30,000 wafers on a monthly capacity starting in this Hsinchu in Taiwan. So I think, there's a lot of stuff going for TSMC that is really great. We can also, if we look at the demand of AI, they say like the chip giant currently produces 3 nanometer chips and plans to commence the mass production, as we said, the 2 nanometer chip next year. Typically a smaller nanometer size yields more powerful and efficient chip, obviously. And then we can see that the progress is going really well on the 2 nanometer space. So I'm really, I don't think TSMC takes these giant leaps that Intel takes in, jumping from nodes. They're kind of doing it step by step, in a kind of evolutionary way and not a revolutionary way. So I think, they take like small steps, but within a very short time space, and they kind of improve their nodes. So this is part of the reason why they've been executing so well over the past, 10 years. One important also note here, Wang said that the capacity of 3 nanometer is expected to more than double in 2024 compared to the previous year. We know also from other industry insider Daniel Nenny, he said that 3 nanometer is absolutely insane for TSMC. Like there's so much customer demand out there, and insanely enough, he kind of pointed to that 2 nanometer is farther ahead than TSMC at the same stage of production. So when 3 nanometer was new, there was huge demand. But according to Daniel Nenny, which runs SemiWiki webpage, he thinks that 2 nanometer is even further ahead, than 3 nanometer. So, I mean, the demand is just like, as I said, like crazy. And again, with this comment from the Bloomberg analyst that says, the price of the 2 nanometer is 15% higher than N3. I think that comes with improved margins, as I said. I think everything looks great. Like this report is just everything that the market needed to give some assurance of the additional bull market for the semiconductor space. Let's have a look at the numbers more in detail. So we can see that the year-on-year second quarter revenue increased 40%. The net income and diluted EPS both increased 36.3%. Compared to the first quarter though, the second quarter result represented a 13.6% increase in revenue and 9.9% increase in net income. And we can see that in US dollar, the second quarter revenue was $20.82 billion, which again is an increase of 32.8% year over year and 10.3% quarter over quarter. The gross margin also was around 53.2%. Operating margin was 42.5%. And importantly, the net profit margin was at 36.8%. And we can see that in the second quarter, they say the shipment of 3 nanometer accounted for 15% of total wafer revenue, 5 nanometer accounted for 37%, and 7 nanometer for 17%. These, which they essentially say are the advanced part of their technology, so everything below 7 nanometer and 7 nanometer, they accounted for roughly 67% of the wafer revenue. We can also see that they kind of talk about expectations of the next quarter. Revenue expected to be between 22.4 and 23.2 billion US dollar. And they also said that the gross profit margin is expected to be between 53.5 and 55.5. So I think, like, again, even some increase quarter over quarter expected in gross profit margin, some nice, 10 to possibly 15, even if they beat this guidance 20% increase in revenue. Maybe not 20, but I could think like let's say mid tens, so like 15% increase in revenue, I think is in play for Q3. So this looks again, really great. And then we can see that if we go back to this one, so where is the revenue coming from? We can see, as they said, 3 nanometer and 5 nanometer is essentially half of their sales now, which if we compare to 1Q, we can see that there it was 3 nanometer was 9 and 5 was 37%. So that's combined of 46%. So this is again important because they have higher profit margins at the higher nodes. And also this is good for ASML. If you watch my videos yesterday, you can see that as you go below 7 nanometer, you really need ASML's EUV machines. So I think this is in general good for the market. And then the legacy nodes, obviously, for some automotive use and others. But again, let's go back to the 2024 Q2. You can see also that smartphones, again, are not that great. They're down 1% year over year, but I think Q3 is going to be strong. But if you're invested in the other semiconductor companies like NVIDIA, AMD, I think this one is really important. Like 52% of HPC, so high performance computing revenue. Just think about that. That's like essentially the AI stuff. So if we go back again to Q1, how much was that? 46%. So they increased their revenue. How much was it? Let's go back again quickly, see how much the increase of their revenue was compared to quarter over quarter. We can see that in the US dollar second quarter revenue, blah, blah, blah. And then we can see that, yeah, it increased 10%, essentially Q on Q. So they increased their revenue 10% in one single quarter. And their HPC revenue went from 46% in Q1 of previous quarter to now in Q2 52%. So not only did the volume increase, but also the market share of their revenue kind of increased from in HPC regards. So basically AI, that your H100s, B100s, or MI300 from AMD. So this really bodes well for NVIDIA and AMD. I truly believe that. Like, now I'm even more confident, especially on AMD, due to the low numbers. NVIDIA already has a lot of growth, behind them in the past 18 months. AMD have not yet, hit that kind of growth yet. I'm not expecting them to hit the same amount of growth, but I think there's going to be some nice growth there. So this is really important takeaway for AMD and NVIDIA again. But then, yeah, let's look at some of the more, fundamental details. We can see that the revenue visualized here, they have, nice gross profit. A bunch of their sales, 53% of their sales is essentially gross profit. 43% is operating profit. And then, net profit is 37%. And as you see, as the volumes again increase, if you're investing for next year or let's say a year after that, you could expect that, the HPC and smartphone continue to increase. And more importantly, now you have like 3 and 5 nanometer for half of the revenue. By next year, I think we could see 3 nanometer accounting for like 25-30% of their sales, which is again more revenue and more sales and higher margins compared to 5 and 7 nanometer. And also, in addition to that, you're gonna have some nice ramp for the the 2 nanometer products with even higher revenue. As they mentioned, some analysts believe like up to 15% higher sales price, which obviously even it just adds up and adds up. So I think, yeah, this is like really good in terms of competitive market out there. Intel is, the main competitor now. I think Samsung is not competition to TSMC, and Intel is, I have to be clarifying here, is the closest competition, but they're still not, in the same league as TSMC right now. But yeah, so you can see that for 2024 and 2025, TSMC is, doing well with the 3 nanometer and the different variants of 3 nanometer that they have. Intel, let's see, they're expected to have their 20A by late this year, but I don't think 20A is gonna be like as good as TSMC's 3 nanometer in term. If you look at the whole picture, the economics, the price of it, the yield, and the volume capacity. But yeah, so Intel is gonna be fairly competitive, but I don't see anything that's gonna threaten TSMC on the technical front, at least not this year or next year. So that's fine. And then looking at some of the more fundamentals, the EPS for let's see the annual one. Last year it was around 5. But I think, as the revenue continued to increase by, 20-30%, Then the EPS now, right now, the estimates are like 6.4, but I think, you know, they're gonna beat that. Maybe it's 7. And if you look at the stock price, so looking at the stock price at 171 after the 8% drop yesterday. Pre-market though, again, you can see market likes it, the 3.5% up right now. And yeah, I think the PE ratio of 33, I quite like it because they are kind of unique in the market. Although with all the geopolitics stuff going on with Donald Trump, I don't think nothing especially will happen. So in my opinion, I'm actually more, you know, on the board with TSMC's valuation than ASML. In terms of if you compare the two big companies that have their earnings right now, I'm a bit more, you know, bullish on TSMC in the short term. Maybe not in the long term. I'm thinking long term ASML is a better play. But in the short term, I think TSMC, like let's say in the 2-year time, I think TSMC is doing good. But more importantly, like TSMC did a favor to the entire market. Again, you know, everything was done badly yesterday. But especially, I really expect a sharp rebound for Nvidia and AMD today. Let's look at the pre-market. You can quickly see AMD up 2%. Not bad. Nvidia, how much are they up? Maybe more. Nvidia is up 2.5%. So yeah, some kind of rebound, but you could probably see this increase as the day comes on, and as potentially the target price for TSMC goes up, and as you know the headlines change, and you know kind of bullish headlines go back online again compared to yesterday, as all the analysts digest the news of TSMC's revenue. I'm potentially seeing a really good green day on general for our, you know, semiconductor portfolio, be it Micron or SMCI or every single one here essentially. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it today. Let's finally finish off with a quick look at Intel. Even Intel is doing good. And just before we finish, we can see that there was also some comments on the call that I think were kind of interest. They hinted of a Fab 2.0. I'm not sure what that could mean. It's like a new business line. I'm really intrigued to see what that could be, you know, in the future. They also, you know, again raised the full year guidance by mid-20s. So that's gonna also be really, really interesting to see. And then finally, to finish off, never forget that the demand is like way, way much more higher than the supply. So TSMC is in a good position, and not only for the next quarter or another one after that. I'm talking about 2025 and 2026. So yeah, all good for TSMC. You know, although this is not, you know, a stock price recommendation, I never do that. This is just my own ideas. But I wouldn't be too worried about this stock at the moment. I think it's very good with some nice potential, especially if the price increases come in. Maybe we could see 200 not too far ahead of time from now. So thank you for watching. Please like the video, subscribe. Please share your comments and your ideas, and see you in the next one.